When Franky points behind Nero, the manga uses the same paneling trick we saw all the way back in Luffy vs. Buggy. It uses the direction the character is looking in to imply focus. We don't need the panel of Nero to have Franky in it, and we don't need a wide shot that shows that Franky is in the direction that Nero isn't looking in. We understand from the panel before that Franky is to the right, therefore Nero is looking away, both away from Franky in world and away from where Franky is on the page from him. And because we don't need that much, we can have Nero's panel be small and tight, to convey the feeling that he's only looking away for the briefest moment before Franky's punch comes straight in. Franky's punch comes in diagonally down and to the right, the exact direction our eye is coming in from the last panel, and directly towards the next panel. This alignment makes the motion feel more satisfying and more real. We also see the exclamation and the impact before we see Franky or Nero, helping us feel like Nero, feeling the pain coming out of nowhere before we realize Franky is there and hitting him. There's a great sense of follow-through because Franky's fist is going past where Nero is, not just stopping at it. The way Nero's head goes off in a different direction from Franky's fist, perpendicular to the punch, helps fill out the panel, using all four corners instead of just wasting space. And it gives the panel an X-shaped composition, perfect for the violent impact that occurred. Franky vs. Nero is one of the most underappreciated fights in One Piece, and it's definitely my favorite Franky fight. It's got great paneling, a ton of goofy moves, and really uses Franky's cyborg body. Last week, I told you all that my next video would be on one of the best paneled action chapters in the series. This is not the fight I meant, but that video is taking a lot longer than I expected, and I really want it to be as good as it can be, so you're gonna have to wait some time. It'll be worth it, I promise. But for now, let's have a short and fun one and talk about more of Franky vs. Nero. I won't be talking about the full fight, but instead just the first half of it. The fight continues past the end of chapter 369 and into chapter 370. There, we see Nero charging towards Franky. If we want to make an attack feel fast, we might zoom in on a character. We might do this panel and then this panel to make it feel like they're coming towards us with increasing intensity. We zoom out instead, and that makes it feel like Franky has more than enough time to prepare a response. It's a stark contrast to how the other members of CP9 were speed blitzing people, but isn't that fitting for the living embodiment of CP9 at home? In both the original and the colored version of the manga, Franky's dark metallic fist stands out really well against everything else, drawing the eye towards it for the punch and drawing it down to the next panel. Between the top two panels and then the full punch, our eye keeps moving down in the direction that it should be going in with his punch, again making the motion feel more satisfying. It even has a great circular composition it swings around in that makes the image look nice. But Nero dodges, and I love the way that Oda draws that power. A normal dodge might have been drawn with Nero's body entirely to the side as he totally gets out of the way. But instead, his body is interwoven with Franky in between different parts of him, at least in terms of how the panel is composed. Which matches the feeling of that paper art technique he uses, making it feel like he's bending around attacks effortlessly. He contradicts Franky's circular composition with hard, straight lines and sharp angles. Before, we drew Franky's fist going past Nero to convey that there's a follow-through, that there's a lot of power here. But in this context, it emphasizes the unintuitiveness of how Nero is dodging, that Franky's attack can go through, cross across Nero's space, and yet not hit him. Before we move on to the next page, let's respect how Oda is consistently drawing water dripping off of their bodies. It's little details like this that make them feel all the more grounded in the environment around them, even in panels without a background. Nero's kick is drawn cleanly, a complex motion made clear through the use of extreme poses. Like the exaggerated keyframes in animation, Nero's poses stretch from one extreme of his kick to the other, giving a sense of speed as he flips around it in just a panel break. It's still careful to draw his leg a little bit to the left, making it feel like the motion is a little bit leftward in addition to upward, which carries us into the leftward attack in the next panel. Even Nero's pose in this panel conveys a part of his character. Look at this goofy shit. Who does he think he is? A JoJo character? A breakdancer? A good fighter makes sure that their attack actually did something. An overconfident buffoon poses like this, grins when their attack hits, and then deservedly freaks out when they realize it did not work. As usual, how characters feel in a One Piece fight is as important as what they do. These panels of Nero are key beats in the fight, just as important as the attacks themselves. If there was ever an example of how physical One Piece's choreography is, it's here in Franky's attack. The story baits both us and Nero by showing Franky leaning back as he's hit by the attack. We think it's because of the impact, and maybe part of it is, but something in us, whether it's primal or cultural, also associates poses that are leaning back with something else. People lean their head backs when they're about to sneeze. The wolf who attacks the three little pigs leans back before blowing their house down, and Franky leans back when he's about to blow your head off with fire. The art tricks us into thinking Franky is taking damage when in reality he's just preparing his next attack, and it does all of that just through a simple pose, through something as simple and physical as him leaning back. I don't want to throw shade at other manga too often, but it would be very easy to have paragraphs explaining this nuanced interaction, how Nero sees this and the details of what it makes him think and then the details of how he realizes it's wrong. When you know, you can just show it and leave it at that. Franky's fire breath follows the same old rule of motion from the right to the left when an attack is happening. The size of the attack, and Franky's big goofy T-posing pose, help show the power and the dominance of the attack. He is dominating this panel. But there is a sense of emptiness at the center of the panel. There is somebody who is not there. Don't attack panels usually show the person that gets hit? But as our eye travels down from here to the next panel, it goes to exactly where Nero is, sort of in the direction that he's moving, away from the train. The framing of this panel is great. It puts Nero in focus, has a sense of depth with the train behind him, and still makes him feel far away from Franky. After our eye goes down to Franky, who is looking to the left towards where the next thing is happening, it once again goes right with Nero's motion. Again, I love how physical the choreography is. It could have just been that Franky attacks and Nero dodges, but we're using the setting, we're using the environment. It's Franky's attack covering the entire rooftop of the train, and Nero having to go all the way off the train in order to dodge it. And then this gives us an opportunity to show off more of CP9's unique techniques, in this case moonwalk, which is itself something Franky has to react to because part of the fight is him being amazed and shocked at what Nero can do. It's just more interesting when instead of just having Nero dodge, you have him go from one state to a different state, being above the water instead of the train, and then returning from that state to the original state. The final page of this chapter encapsulates everything we've seen so far. We need these close-ups because the important part of this chapter, what the characters are going through, is the exact same thing, wondering what the hell is the deal with the other one. Doing it with both of them is more important than doing it with just one, because that's part of the conceit of the fight, that they are having the same reaction, even though it's to very different things. It's a fight between two weirdos, perfect for Franky. The final panel shows more of what we've been getting, boiling it down to just one panel. We need the state of this fight in our memory, because there is an entire chapter between here and the next time we see these two. So the composition of this clash emphasizes the key points. Nero's attack is hitting Franky, but Franky isn't reacting to that due to his frontward invulnerability. There's contact, but Franky isn't bent at all. He's in the exact same pose he would be in anyway. While Franky's attack is going past Nero due to Nero's strange ability to dodge, and both characters are crossing over each other, showing that they're in direct conflict. The nature of this doesn't just reflect their powers, but their personalities too. Franky is a brash, lovable caricature of Americans that faces everything head on, while Nero is literally a rat. Or is he a cat? He was hissing a lot earlier, but he looks more rat-like to me and he definitely feels more rat-like to me. I don't know, whatever. Next week, we'll be back to talking about the new chapters. Subscribe if you want to see those. Hopefully the big video that I have planned will be ready for the next break week. And if you want to see me talk about the second half of Franky vs. Nero, or any other past chapters that you think are cool, leave a comment. Finally, if you've ever felt like just as much of a weirdo as Franky, then leave a like. Stay super.